And we are live. Good evening, hello, and welcome everyone. It's time for another exciting episode of IT Career in Australia channel. And tonight's topic is what does a SRE do and how to become one? Join us today for engaging panel discussion where we'll dive into the world of site reliability engineering. Our speakers will share their personal journey, explore their diverse careers paths and that led them to become SREs, and share insights into daily responsibilities and challenges they face. So these conversations aim to offer some comprehensive view on what it means to work in site reliability engineering space and provide some valuable advice for those aspiring to enter the field. While you're exploring your career options or aiming to transition to SRE, this session promise some insights and guidance to help you. So make sure have your questions ready. You can post them in the comments, but please make sure to stay on the topic. Please introduce yourselves in the comments. Let us know what you do and join our conversations with your questions, or at least say hi in the comments so that we know that you're here and you're listening. I'm Jana Martins. If you forgot or haven't seen the show before, and I'm passionate about learning more about present and future of tech industry, and obviously sharing it here on my channel. So again, topic, what does a site reliability engineer do and how to become one? And before I pass it over to our speakers to introduce themselves, just quickly want to remind you that we're streaming live on LinkedIn and YouTube. If you missed the stream, no worries, you can watch the replay by subscribing to my YouTube channel. Please, of course, subscribe to the channel. I'm really close to the 1,000 followers. Only need about 25 more people, so I really appreciate if you jump and subscribe. And also join my meetup group where you can see my announcement for upcoming events. And we also have face-to-face events in Melbourne. So anyway, so also always encourage you to use this live stream as the opportunity, not only learn new information, but network with people in the industry. So there is a nice giveaway at the end of each stream for you to encourage you to network more. Anyway, that's enough of me. We have a few people joining. Thank you, Barsha, for saying hi. Thank you, Sahil, for saying hi. Please don't be shy. Say hi in the comments. It means a lot for me. And I'm passing on to our speakers to introduce themselves. Please, we'll start with Stephen.
Hi, how you going? My name is Stephen Townshend. My background initially was performance engineering until I joined an SRE enablement team within an organization. And as part of that, I started this podcast called Slight Reliability, which was in the beginning all about sharing my journey learning SRE and has sort of turned into something bigger. And I have guests from all over the world to talk about SRE and their journeys. And I'm currently working as an environment manager at IAG, which is Australasia's largest general insurance provider.
Stephen, we'll make sure we'll post the link to your podcast in the comments as well. So to make sure to send it to me after the stream. Please, Artem.
Hello, my name is Artem, and I am an engineering director of SRE at a company called Cultramp. Overall, I'm very passionate about reliability and performance in the both cloud and more on-prem environments. And before that, most of my career I've spent at Google, where I also was in an SRE and a SRE role before.
Thank you. And Dom, please, over to you.
Hey all, my name's Dom. As Jana mentioned, I'm a principal SRE at the moment, gone across multiple companies, getting a range of experience. And I guess I'm into SRE. It sort of seems to be the answer as to how to do things better when it comes to operations and how to run platforms or products for customers. So, yeah.
Thank you. We have a few more people joining us. SRE Path, I like the YouTube channel. Here you go. We have SRE channel here too. Ash from SRE Path, go Stefan. Let me see. Steven, sorry, I keep mispronouncing people's names. Steven, so here you go. You have some fans here. Here you go. VM. I don't know. Can't tell
He's
your
my
name.
Competition. He's not my. He's my competition.
Your competition. Here we go. Here we go. Pressure's on. Pressure's on. Okay, so before we dive into the all the SRE path, career paths and responsibilities, I would like you, each of you, just briefly talk about your SRE journey and maybe a little bit about what actually inspired you to pursue that career. Is it been, something that just happened? Or, you went to uni and decided, like, that's what I want to do. I want to be site reliability engineer. So let's start with Dom this time.
Lovely. So I started out my adult life as an audio engineer, which didn't quite pay the bills. So I decided that got me into computers, which took me into software, where I started as like a support engineer, first level support, which, like I said, it's like a desire to do things better, to see where we can go with things. So that led me into operations, into DevOps. And then finally, I was looking for a change of organization, and there was a job called SRE, which I did some research into. And given like the heavy operational background, it sounded quite amazing as to, wow, this is what we can go do and how we can run things at scale. So yeah, for me, it's just the desire to do things better. And now that I have been an SRE for 5 years, that desire is still there. There's just always new things to explore and discover, and new ways to think about things. It's really fruitful from an engineering perspective to take on these challenges. So that's the part I'd like about it the most.
Yeah, perfect. Artem, what about you? Did you were born and decided, that's it, I'm gonna go to Google and be a SRE?
Not really, I would say. So my path has been relatively similar. So I also I also started in support. I actually have a degree which is unrelated, because I realized during it that I'm more interested in working with computers associated with a degree, and not with the degree itself, which is environmental engineering. So after support, I actually joined Google in an operations position, kind of like more of a internal OPSI, sysadmin stuff. Then I went to cloud, and I really wanted to be able to affect the affect and make the systems that I work with better. And so I eventually transferred to SRE, and then to CRE, which is Customer Reliability Engineering, which is kind of SRE consulting essentially for others. And afterwards, I decided to try something more greenfield. And so nowadays I'm more working at smaller startups, but it's definitely fun.
Yeah, perfect. And Stephen, what about you?
Well, I did actually study computer science, so that's so interesting. But then I got a second degree. I trained to be a professional actor, and obviously that didn't pan out quite the way I wanted to. But it was a good experience, and I met my wife at drama school, so that was good. But I did performance engineering for 13 years. That was my specialty, and I kind of got to a point where I was really confident and really good at that. But there was just something about, I was doing all this tuning and finding issues, but I looked at the organization and saw bigger challenges which needed tackling. And SRE was the perfect way for me to step in and have that broader scope of work to try and improve more across the organization. And I was only able to make that move because there was a particular executive who had seen SRE in practice at other places. He stood up and incubated a team, and because he knew my work, he was like, yep, let's do this. So yeah, I was quite lucky. And so I did that for a couple of years. Yeah. And even though I'm not an SRE right now, my job entirely is about the reliability of our environments as we deliver big programs of work now.
Yeah, perfect. I think, it's always great to see that you never know where the career path will take you. I think sometimes people get a bit disencouraged and they get the wrong degree and they think oh my God, I've studied that for 5 years. I need to find a job in this field. But, you can always move around, and there is nothing wrong. I think, especially now that everything moving so quickly, we all have a few careers during our times. And I think it's always good to remind people that, it's never late to change something or move to different career path. Let's just talk a little bit, kind of have a bit of a broader perspective. let's just talk about a little bit about what is actually reliability. What is site reliability engineering in general? How do you measure it? Just sort of the general understanding, what actually this field about. Maybe we'll start with Stephen this time.
I might start a fight because I might say something which you disagree with you, but okay. So I'll start with what is reliability, right? Because before we talk about SRE, which is a practice about reliability, what is reliability? And there's a guy called Naran Desai who did a talk at SRECon a few years ago, and he defined it, and I like the way he defined it. It was just three things. Reliability is about the availability of our services. It's about the performance of our services, which is a layered thing in itself, and the correctness of services. So we host technology services for customers. Are they functioning as intended? Which is maybe not quite the right way to describe correctness. I've always struggled to sort of define that, but I think those three areas kind of encompass what reliability is. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Artem, do you agree with Stephen?
I have a more customer-centric view of reliability in general, and this is more of a kind of personal opinion. I think that reliability, essentially, at the end of the day, it means trust. Trust of your users into your systems and like their performance, and but they can do the things that they want to do in your either app or service or whatever piece of technology you maintain. And so from that, everything else flows. And I believe that the reliability is something that is almost defined by the user. So at the end of the day, if you're if all your metrics look green, but at the same time a person cannot check out in like a e-commerce store, for example, then your service is not reliable, in my opinion.
Makes sense. Definitely can relate to this from user perspective. Dom, what is your definition?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably something in between both these two guys. I mean, the book definition of reliability is the probability that a service or component will perform its duties over a given window of time. I think the interesting part about our field is reliability in that definition assumes the past is going to be the same as the future, which is not the same in distributed systems where people are doing deployments at will. So I think to Artem's point, it's more about what the user experiences. You can have all the metrics that say you're doing a good job, but if there's a pool of users saying that I can't use your product, then something's gone wrong there. So it's interesting because it's you're applying an engineering to a subjective field almost.
I just wanted to say, so in terms of SRE and what it is, I think I've got like a personal bias a little bit towards it. So I had to define in a conference last year, like what is SRE? And I sort of came up with this definition. For me, it was to design, build and operate reliable services at scale, first half. Second half, and to make the operating of those services more enjoyable and manageable for people. Because I've burnt out in IT, in the IT world, to the point where I wasn't myself for a whole year. I had to stop work for a while. I had to go on medication. I've seen the toll that very complex situations and technology can make. So a lot of my work now, I reflect, why am I doing this? It's actually to make not just the user experience from the end customer better, but also all of these people who operate these extraordinarily complex systems every single day and build them as well.
Yeah. So, sorry, just want to share a few comments. We have few fans here for you guys. Carly here had the pleasure of working with Dom across 2 different companies. VM chiming in for Artem, one of the best engineers and humans I've ever worked with. Super good mentor too. Here he goes. And Stephen, here's your podcast competitor as well. So. So definitely few of your fans is here. So I guess the main question of today's discussion is what actually, obviously we want to make sure that the customer's happy and they can check out on our sites and enjoy our product. But what actually SRE do? Yes, and I think maybe it's good to clarify a little bit. I think there's a lot of confusion out there, especially maybe people who don't work in the field so much, and between the recruiters as well. when they're trying to define the role, and it's often get like mixed up with like platform, cloud, DevOps, SREs. So it's all kind of get into one one sort of job description sometimes. So what's the difference, and what's the main responsibilities of SRE engineer? How about we'll start with Artem.
I would say it highly depends on the company nowadays, because what I've noticed is some places do try to follow more kind of Google style like SRE practices. Some try to follow more Etsy style kind of SRE practices, but some places just took their entire like system administration department and then just renamed it into SRE, and that's and like called it a day. So I think this is why I usually recommend asking what the job actually entails. What is the typical day? What are you going to be looking after? Like, what are you going to be maintaining? Like on-call responsibilities, etc., to figure out like whether the job actually like matches what it is. In general, how I view it personally is that SRE, at the end of the day, it historically appeared kind of slightly before DevOps, essentially, and it was about operations at scale, because when at the time Google has started scaling at a very large pace, and you no longer could like look and just reliably look at a dashboard of a server that runs like across 2,000 different servers, and they have kind of invented this both kind of culture, mindset, and a position to kind of cover the operations at scale using software engineering practices. And so nowadays, I would say the line, for me at least, is a little bit more blurry between like SRE, like DevOps, and the modern definition of operations, because nowadays with cloud and with like large scalable systems, you can no longer get by without at least some software engineering skills in the field.
Yeah, no, makes sense. Stephen, anything to kind of add? What is your definition? What's the difference for you between all these roles?
Well, I completely agree with Adam that it's completely depends on who you ask and what the organization. So many organizations really just have traditional ops and just call it SRE. I think to differentiate it in a lot of ways, SRE is quite production centric most of the time, whereas a lot of the other roles are more sort of broadly looking at delivery and operations. Yeah, and if you're wanting to get like in specific sort of areas that SREs work in, which I don't know, I guess other areas work in them too. There's things like observability and incident response and reducing toil. Toil is a big thing. And like I said about making it the lives of people who operate software better, a big part of that is reducing all that manual, repetitive, tedious work and automating it or simplifying it, which is actually my favorite thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And Dom, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with anything that's been said. One thing I like to direct my thinking towards is cost-effective operations. So actual, really explicit operations, because in the land before SLOs, you can answer alerts for forever. So to me, one of the things that's a differentiator with SRE is the ability to have cost-effective operations. This is how many nines we need. This is how much it's going to cost us to run. And this is the complexity we're going to have to deal with to do it in production. Is that something we as an organization want to do? And so I think the way that then is executed is also a differentiator, where we have SRE principles that overlap with context within an organization, but then in practice, those principles are going to be very organization specific. I don't know if I've just said a lot of words, or are people sort of following the train of thought?
Well, I completely agree from the sense that, Adam, you worked at Google, right? Google's a huge organization. It's almost, you can't even call it one thing. It's so many things. I've worked for big organizations by Australia and New Zealand standards, but nothing compared to that. So the kind of work that benefits that organization is quite different in a way. Although, so whether you call it SRE or not, I don't really care, as long as it's about improving, reliability, customer experience, staff experience in a way.
Yeah, I agree.
And I guess following up from this, obviously, there's this a bit of a blurry line sometimes in terms of position descriptions. But if you would be hiring a SRE engineer right now, what would you put in there, like a key responsibilities? Maybe start with Artem.
What I would say is software in general. It's writing software that maintains our production operation stack. Then second is incident response and being able to help people with service outages, being able to communicate during them, being able to keep a clear head in a highly kind of unstable environment. And the final one, I think, is about observability and being able to observability, I think. And the last one is around performance. So being able to build systems that are observable, that you can easily figure out their state, and systems that are performant, and being able to measure performance at scale and tune performance at scale.
Dom, anything to add to this?
I mean, not really. If I was to write a job description and I was starting in a net new organization, I would probably use the reliability pyramid that is in the Google SRE book, because that sets out logical foundations as to stepping towards sort of production expertise. The only thing I would say, which is sort of a nitpick of mine within the industry, instead of observability, I would like SREs to understand how to use telemetry and have that as an explicit area that we explore during the interview, or like a competency, because I think just saying observability means a ton of different things. And I think SREs need to be able to educate software engineers about telemetry and how it works and what to use it for.
Yeah.
I'd only add one more thing. Sorry.
Yes, of course.
I would be, in my particular context, it's really important that someone is able to understand complex distributed systems and architecture, because it's, if you don't understand the context of why something is working, it's very difficult to improve it or measure it or make sense of it. Yeah.
And I think Artem just posted the link to that Dickerson pyramid that everyone can have a look at the Google description. Okay, so we kind of have that set of responsibilities, but if someone sort of want to pursue the career at SRE, so what sort of essential tools and technology practices they need to start learning about? Where would they start? Yes, so there is obviously those responsibilities, but is it any tools that they need to use, any technology, or is it more about, again, their ability to respond quickly and the things that you mentioned? Maybe Stephen, will start with you first.
Okay, well, I think part of it is my SRE experience is quite weird, quite different from most people, being I wasn't on call, like looking after production systems. I was in this enablement team exploring ideas, so it was quite different. I actually think, and people have asked me this question before, especially performance engineers, how do I get into SRE? And I actually said, although I didn't do it, try and get to the point when you're operating a production system, because you'll learn so much from that. I think that would help. I think in terms of practices, though, observability. Sorry, Dom, observability, but it's properly understanding what to measure, how to measure it, and how to interpret that information in a meaningful way. Super important. Another one, and I actually don't particularly like SLOs to start with. If you're like a new SRE and you're working from the start, SLOs, from my experience trying to implement them at IAG in the past, were just so difficult. To do it in a meaningful way where this is actually helping anyone was really difficult. I think there are steps to get, I don't think we define SLOs, service level objectives. So that's what that is. The idea is that rather than in the past, we had systems that we could kind of hold in our mind and we could measure these different things and have a sense of health. We can't do that now. Systems are way too complex. So instead we say, what are the services we provide in the customer? And we measure the reliability of that. And I think that's a whole different paradigm for how you measure things. But I'll pass on to someone else, but that's two things.
Artem, what do you think? What the main skills, technology, tools, anything?
I would say one thing I wanted to add to Stephen's is I do completely agree with that. Systems are becoming much more complex that we can easily reason about without SLOs. But one other thing is that the user patterns also become way too complicated. You have people on mobile phones with constantly like in and out, going network. You have people that are roaming, people that are connecting from like different types of different locations, different types of networks with like very like different like clients, operating systems, etc. So the amount of different kind of like use cases has definitely like affected this quite a bit as well. In general, how I view it is you need to know some sort of a programming language. I would say it doesn't really matter which one in particular. But you do need to understand programming from both a perspective of you can write a tool to make your life easier, and you can debug production code and like measure its performance using like the standard kind of like language utilities. Then another big cornerstone is understanding of operating systems. So understanding in case of like Linux is one of the most major ones nowadays. So understanding how like the major flavors, like how kernel works in general, how does virtualization work, how does network work, and then understanding in general kind of like the process of software delivery. So like, version control systems like VCS hosting, etc. And I would say those are the kind of the major cornerstones, and then cloud providers. So generally, I would say if you want to be like a competitive SRE in the market, you need to have a good knowledge of at least two. So either like of at least two of a big three. So it's either like Azure and GCP, or GCP and AWS, or AWS and Azure. And the last thing is also both like monitoring, log management, and like everything that encompasses like observability. So like having being able to work with those technologies, understand how how to send telemetry, understand how to how to send logs in an efficient way, how to query logs in an efficient way. That's I think the most things off the top of my head. I think I will pass to Dom.
I mean, outside of what's already been talked about, I think the first thing anyone can do is take accountability for a system somewhere. I mean, everyone has internet at home. Everyone has a family or other people that uses the internet. Monitor it and figure out how to run it like an SRE. Because if you break it, you'll get yelled at. And if they complain that it's slow, maybe you can show them that the data says it's not slow. And then you can get into those sort of SRE evangelism conversations about, well, am I measuring the right thing that the customer's experiencing? Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. I think like the skills and tools you'll learn under implementing something like that will be quite valuable. It depends on where you're starting from, but that's something everyone can do. I tried to set up WireGuard at home, a VPN, and got yelled at by my son. So it's difficult.
Can I just acknowledge that the skills that we just described, that's very rare to find someone who has all of those skills and is really good at it. That's a unicorn.
Yeah,
it's very difficult. And so it's a bit intimidating. Like if I even hearing you guys talk about it, I'm intimidated. So how do we expect everyone else to feel about that?
Start with your family, people that'll forgive you.
I mean, I always get a pop-up that I need to change my internet password, that it's too weak. and all this stuff, and never really use any VPN. So here we go. So I have a long way to any SRE journey at the moment. Okay, so we have a few questions here. Louis asking, how often do you guys get calls from ops during midnight? I think it's like a burning question for anyone who's going to SRE. So how many times actually someone call you in the middle of the night? After applying SRE principles in the dev and or ops team, does such a kind of case get improved? Who wants to start with the answer?
Well,
Yeah.
You go, Artem.
there you go.
I mean, it depends. Like, there's so much context behind this question, or potential context. Applying SRE principles doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get less alerts. In some cases, it might mean you're going to get more meaningful alerts. So if we don't have an ops team, for example, and we're an SRE team that's a sort of an auxiliary function beside a software engineering team, and we take the pager for their critical incidents, and they're burning through their SLO, we're still going to get alerted. We're just going to have data that lets us have a discussion the next day when we're tired and grumpy and say, do you need to make your service more reliable? So after that, and the conversations that follow on taking the pain of alerts is where you'll start to see relief. And teams and product managers get involved and say, well, actually, we need to work on reliability so we make our customers happy and we keep our SREs rested, essentially. But it's got to come back to the customer.
Stephen, anything to add?
I was just going to, somewhat related, I interviewed Steve McGee, who's a reliability advocate at Google last year, and he talked about how right now at Google, something is broken. Things are always broken in the digital age of modern complex distributed systems. You might not notice it, and that's okay, but there might be still people getting paged to go and fix stuff, but the customers never notice it because of the way it's architected and run and operated and all the automation, right? So I don't know. It's just it's a mindset shift to say incidents are not this thing we must avoid at all costs. They're going to happen. It's just that's how we manage that. This different our mindset around that.
Artem, anything to add to this? Or
I would say so. In terms of like one of the perks of leadership in air quotes is that I'm the final escalation point for like every single ops rotation. So I would say, in general, I think over the past year, I think like I've gotten only 2 pages outside of working hours, and both of them were kind of like major, like serious things that like actually required attention. Otherwise, I would say generally having the team that maintains the service own at least part of the pager rotation usually really helps, because this now creates a motivational loop for not only for the engineers on the service, but also for their leadership and management to improve the service reliability. And that usually is how I would suggest like approaching it, is that like you need to have a joint responsibility between ops and dev to make sure that those kind of those cases go down. Otherwise, there's not as much incentive to improve certain things.
I think it's kind of one of the most common questions when someone applying for a SRE position. The most common question is like, how often I will be on call? How often I'm going to wake up in the middle of the night? I guess just maybe briefly from your experience, is it the thing like if you're joining, especially if you're in like a junior SRE position, does it actually mean that you're going to get calls in the middle of the night?
I would say that not necessarily so. So also, if you are going as a junior into a position, usually if things really go badly, they would want someone who has a decent amount of experience fixing it. And another thing is that not all services require 24/7 functioning. Like a lot of services, for example, in this corner of the world, in like Asia Pacific, are very like geo-specific. So they work during the Australian like working hours, for example, or China working hours or Singapore working hours. And so, yes, you can kind of get like a call relatively late, but during the night, there is no one using the service. So there is usually like no pages as well. And another thing is that if your service usually requires like a 24/7 rotation and you have like engineering teams like all over the world and you're in a very large organization, then usually the rotations would be like can get called on the weekend or outside of hours, but you usually don't get called during the night, because the rotations usually follow the sun. Because in general, it is not in anyone's interest to wake up a person and have them fix something critical, because a person who has been just woken up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m., surprise, surprise, is not the best person to fix something very quickly. So usually it's, I would say, only at a certain kind of stage of the company that kind of thing is required, and only for a limited amount of time, why they either kind of create another site, or they kind of, like decide to like to separate their stack in like a more like manageable chunks.
Yeah, makes sense. I think we don't need to go too deep into this question, but I think it's just that a common question for everyone who like applying to SRE roles. They're like, oh, do I have to be on call? Do I have to be on call? But coming back to sort of our topic, what do you think the main actually challenges, and what is difficult about site reliability engineering? So maybe we'll go back to Dom. Dom, you kind of, we're losing you in the dark. The sunset came.
Sunset came. Here, go. I'll throw to Stephen and I'll go turn a light on.
Okay.
Okay. Well, like I said before, true SRE, like really expert staff level SREs, just the breadth of things that you need to be good at is overwhelming. And honestly, I don't think many people are capable of being like absolute star SREs based on that. So that's one challenge. But in my world, which is more like enterprise in Australia, New Zealand type, that's my life, right? I think that the big challenge is changing mindsets and culture, because if there's a team of people, or a leader maybe, or a senior engineer, and they've never seen what different or good looks like, it can be quite challenging to convince them that things can be different and better. So, and there's a lot of work that goes into that, and this whole all tactics around, demonstrating value, going in and helping them and sharing their pain first, and all kinds of things. But it's really difficult to take an organization on a journey. But that's kind of my world, which is helping enable change in organizations. I'll pass back to Dom.
Dom, now we can see you. Perfect. Yeah. So, what do you think the biggest challenges in being a SRE?
Yeah, I mean, building on from Stephen's comments, I think one of the hardest challenges is proving the value back to the organization, because the role of SRE at the end of the day is kind of a preventative measure. We did this, so we stopped this. But that's really hard to report up as a metric compared to like, this happened and then we did this and we solved it. So I think trying to kickstart SRE at an organization is really difficult. You need to understand what the organization sees as value in the reliability context of the products they provide to the services. And you need to get leadership buy-in on understanding. That's why I come back to the comment before about cost-effective reliability, because to me, you're talking about cost. If you're not measuring reliability, you're kind of spending money limitlessly on operations, because it can go forever. So outside of defining the value, yeah, I think to Stephen's point, like, sometimes you're expected to be a bit of a unicorn, but the reality is, with the complexity, you need to set yourself up to be able to move quickly and understand things quickly, so you can help remediate quickly. So it's kind of the in play, or like, I know the live work that is where that's really challenging, but that's also what's exciting.
Yeah. Artem, anything to add to this? What's been the biggest challenges to you?
I would say it all depends on the size of organization, but overall, I would say that organizational buy-in is really, really important. I've been relatively lucky in this, but I can definitely see how this can become very challenging if you if a rest of the organization is not supportive in the reliability goals. And so I would say for anyone who creates a new practice, you definitely will have to spend at least most of your time in the beginning to understand like what the users actually need, what the users care about, what products cares about, what the how do commercials and financials of a company look like, and how do you fit in that picture?
We have some more questions from the audience that I want to bring to the screen. Luimi, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, asking, does the SRE need to deal with security breaches or patching, or is it more likely to be responsibility of the ops and security team? Artem, what do you think?
I think so in this particular case, generally, I would say it's actually a response. So the patching is responsibility of the end teams that are actually like creating a piece of software. So for example, if it's like a scheduler or something that belongs to the SRE team, then yes, the SRE needs to patch it. If it's like a front end by your front end development team, then it needs to be patched by them in general in organizations. In terms of security breaches, so identification and incident risk, like security incident response, is usually owned by security. If you have a security org that is big enough, then it's also responded by the security operations in particular, so like the so-called SecOps team usually. But SREs definitely do play a role often, because during an like for example access like incident, from time to time you need to you need to either like stop and lock certain systems down, etc. So this is why usually I find SRE and like our ops teams usually work very tightly with security on certain kinds of incidents.
Makes sense. Dom, do you have anything to add to this? Did Artem cover it all?
Not in particular. I mean, it's organizational dependence, like whatever the organization needs at the time. One pattern that I have seen though is SRE can become a catch-all. So someone from marketing notices security something, tell the SRE team, or like people start to rely on them, funnily enough, for any sort of issues, which then you would divert to the SRE, the security team, if that was a function within the org.
Yeah. Stephen, anything to add? Or all good? Okay, so discussion busted time. Maybe we have two more questions. Time for two more questions. If you guys have any final questions in the comments, please pop your questions. But I guess the obvious question here, so we're thinking about, we're talking about how to become the SRE. So what sort of courses, books, conferences, any resources, what would you recommend to people who may be thinking to move to SRE space, or considering the career in the space? What would be your recommendation in terms of the resources, books, conferences, and so on? Stephen, maybe we'll start with you.
Well, there's this awesome podcast called Site Reliability. It's got everything you need to know. I'm kidding.
I'm gonna put it in the comments right now. You send me a link, so I'll pop it in the comments straight away.
I think I wouldn't rely on sort of big corporate conferences, more the community-based ones. So SRE Con's the obvious one. It's some of the talks are incredible, and you can learn a lot from that. There's also SLO Conf and a few other conferences around. KubeCon can be quite good for some things as well. So there's that. In terms of books, they're not quite SRE specific. So there's the SRE book, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend reading it cover to cover necessarily. Just pick the bits that work for you at this time and maybe come back to it later. But there's other books as well by Google. And then there's books which aren't about SRE, but I think help provide context about why we do what we do. So there's a couple of books I thought just have really changed my whole perspective on work. Sooner, Safer, Happier, incredible. The Toyota Way, Lean Startup, The Manager's Path, and of course the Phoenix Project / the Unicorn Project. Yeah, those are, although they're not specific to SRE, they frame why we need it, I think, quite nicely. And apart from that, there are several podcasts. There's SRE Path, there's Site Reliability. I think Google has a SRE podcast. I can't remember what it's called. The Google SRE, the Google
Prodcast.
There we go. Podcast. There you go. Yeah. but a big, obviously that's all great. And then training courses, the only things I've really found value in is when I needed to know a specific technology, like, hey, I really need to upskill in Kubernetes. Go and do some training for it. I'll pass over to someone else.
Yep. Tom, anything to add?
I mean, outside of that, understanding like practical reliability, so things from manufacturing industries and things like that away from software, and then seeing how it's being applied in software will give you a pretty good context. And in addition to that, like getting really concrete understandings of the words, the nomenclature, like reliability, redundancy, robustness, resilience. What are all those things and how do they tie together? So I can talk to people about this stuff, and then I can start to think about it in my software engineering or when I'm assessing operations. I mean, that's on top of what Stephen already mentioned, I reckon.
Yep. Artem, anything to add to that list of the resources?
I'll send one in the comments. I would say overall, there's actually like a relatively old but a good book for the start, which is called Practice of Cloud System Administration, which is kind of describes more high level concepts without necessarily like going into deep into how do you implement them in like each database or like each system. Another one is there's a good resource called Roadmap SH, and the DevOps SRE roadmap is actually pretty decent. I've often recommended it to people, and it helps you structure your learning very well. And another thing that I add from myself is that a part of SRE at the end of the day is making sure that your users have a good experience. So having some basic understanding about user interaction with systems and how users perceive things like performance and is very important. So for example, like knowing that, hey, if it's over 200 if an interaction takes over 200 milliseconds, then generally users start to perceive it as slow and things like that. So for that, I would recommend like the two classics. Like one is Don't Make Me Think by Stig Krog, and the other one is 100 Things That Every Designer Needs to Know About People, which is about interactions design. I'll post the links in the comments.
Thank you. Perfect. That will be helpful. Guys, we have 10 minutes left of our podcast. So if you have any questions, put in the comments. I've noticed there is no comments from the LinkedIn. So if you're watching us LinkedIn, you're commenting and the comments not go through, please don't blame me, blame LinkedIn. And you can just swap to the link on the YouTube and post the question on the YouTube if you've been trying to post the comments on LinkedIn and it didn't go through for any reason. So make sure to put it on YouTube. So one more question I want to ask you is what is the future of the site reliability engineering? Is it like here to stay? Is it a good career path to choose? You will have a plenty of work, or what's next in that field? Maybe we'll start with Stephen this time.
What's the future? I mean, honestly, in recent years, in the last couple of years, I feel like SRE's been overshadowed by new buzzwords, which is really dumb. I think platform engineering for a while was like, it's platform engineering, it's going to solve all the problems. It's like, oh, here we go again. And then now it's generative AI, it's going to solve all the problems. No, it's not. It's like, I think it's a great career choice. Absolutely. Because as long as you're focusing on outcomes, right? It doesn't matter what you do. If you're constantly thinking about what is the outcome I'm trying to achieve and how can I do that the best way that I can, and as myself and my team and my company, you can't really go wrong. But as soon as you're just like, this is what I do, I follow these processes, I do this tool, then that's no good. Anyway, I'll pass to someone else.
Artem is a good choice now to go to site reliability engineering.
Definitely, I would say, because the systems are becoming even more complex, so there will always need people to maintain them and to design them and to make sure that they're performant. One thing I would say is that nowadays kind of SRE starts to blur a little bit more with data engineering in some cases, because for most systems nowadays, most systems are essentially at the end of the day, they're data systems. So usually what I would recommend is kind of if you want to have like good like job security for the future is like knowing a bit about like data engineering and like storing like massive amounts of data would really help in your kind of like operational or SRE career.
Perfect. Dom, what's your receipt in the future? What's your forecast for SRE?
Two completely unvetted ideas, but I would like to see, or at least explore, the combination of SRE working closely with user analytics. So we have data describing like the hot paths that customers take through a multitude of systems to then apply reliability practices to that. Because that's sort of data showing the path the users take. And depending on how complex the infrastructure and organization is, it might not be something that's obvious until it's traced. So that's something I'd like to explore the idea of in the future. Additionally, I think SRE has an opportunity to help push the field of resilience engineering, which is its own thing as well, but also draw on practices from it and bring it back into SRE, especially doing everything around incidents, incident management, post-incident learning. So I'd like to see that come into like the set of principles and practices more as that field develops.
Perfect. And finally, just really quick, we talk about a lot of things today. I think we covered quite a bit of information. But if you need to give your final top piece of advice to someone who, particularly to those who aspire to pursue a SRE career, what would be your one top advice for someone like this? So maybe Dom. We'll start with you.
Arm yourself with enough knowledge and skills to become explicit about what you're trying to do. So that's not necessarily SRE, but I think it's a core tenet of like, what are you doing over there, SRE? I'm trying to do this because of this, and this is why it's happening. Like, be able to reason the decisions you're making in production, because that's where you primarily live.
Is it more about your communication, or is it more about your process and...
It's about being really explicit with your operational goals or what you're trying to achieve at the time, because you, like I said, you are in production. You're supposed to own production. Like, your role is to really run production as good as you can. So you need to be quite firm on your understandings and decisions you're going to make, or at least understand the risk and uncertainty involved in them. So again, that's part of being explicit about the state of things.
Yep. Stephen, what would be your top advice?
I actually would almost the same as Dom. I think it's a little bit generic to say it again, but just focus on outcomes. I think I meet a lot of engineers who are doing a lot of techie stuff, but they don't understand why they're doing it or what the value is, and they're not sort of measuring, hey, I did this thing and this is why, and here's the outcome. Because we need that. Otherwise, we need to pivot and constantly experiment and change and adjust and to find our way forward in the right direction. So focus on outcomes.
Artem, anything to add, or you have completely different advice, maybe?
I would say and reiterate again that one of the most important things about reliability from like my perspective is your end users and people that interact with your systems at the end of the day. So I think one piece of advice I would say is always think about how the work you're doing is impacting someone at the end of the day, be it if you're internal, be it like a developer that is trying to debug something at 8 p.m. in the evening, or if you're running a customer facing system, be it someone who's trying to to buy something. So having a bit of that empathy and understanding would really help you tailor your solutions in a very good way.
Perfect. And I also saw that Artem just typed some of the books he recommended. I just pop it in the comments for you guys as well, and I'll make sure that I'll pop it on the LinkedIn comments as well, so you can have a look at the resources. And the exciting part of the stream is the giveaway. So we always have some people with the good questions, and our usual giveaway is a virtual coffee chat with the speakers and the opportunity to network in the industry and ask more questions. So I'm going to do announcement for next week, and while I'm doing that, I'll get our speakers to look through the chat and pick one person who they're gonna set up a virtual coffee chat and network after the stream. So next, actually, before I talk about the next week, this week on Saturday, I'm doing another face-to-face event in Melbourne. So my tech walking event, it's your opportunity not only to meet people in the industry, but maybe even shed a few calories on the way. So we meeting at the Albert Park and Lake at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, and doing a 5-kilometer loop around the lake and networking with like-minded people. So if that's kind of type event you would like, please join us this Saturday. And next Wednesday, same time, 5:30 p.m. as usual, we're gonna cover the topic, you are Scrum Masters. So what's next? Definitely a lot of Scrum Masters been affected by redundancy in the last 12 months. And there is a bit of a paradox. There is companies still hiring Scrum Masters, and there is a lot of Scrum Masters on the market, but something is not matching there. So we're going to uncover it in our next discussion next Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. So if you're a Scrum Master and you're a bit confused what's happening in the market, definitely join our session next Wednesday. Cool. So okay, so there's a time for the giveaway. Let's have a look what we have. So Artem choose Lumi. I don't know how to say your name, sorry. But Lumi, please make sure to connect with me on LinkedIn so I can connect you to Artem, and you can book the virtual coffee chat and maybe explore a bit more in depth some questions that you ask. And Dom, who did you choose? Dom, you muted.
Sorry, Temicus 05? Or that's you?
That's me, actually. So I've been posting stuff.
There we go. I'll pick another one.
I need to choose and Stephen choosing VM. Here we go. The fan of the Artem. Okay, so VM, please, again, don't know your name. Sorry, that YouTube name is not the best. Please make sure to connect with me on LinkedIn. Diana Martin, so just easy to find, and I'll make sure that I'll connect you with Stephen. Dom, did we choose who you're talking with?
I might follow up with Ash from SRE Path, because I listened to him and I don't think he knows I do. So
here we go, Ash. The following up with competitors. Here we go.
Sorry, Stephen.
All right, VM, we're doing a night podcast episode instead of just a chat. Okay, we're recording the session, and it's going to be way better than what Ash does. Here we go.
Here we go. VM is a Vito. Thank you, Vito, for popping up your name. Okay, so Vito, please find me on LinkedIn so I can connect you with Stephen and SRE Path, Ash from SRE Path. Make sure that to connect so we can connect with Dom. Anyway, thank you so much, guys. That was great. I think we actually covered so much information today. Go through many questions, and I do hope that it gave everyone a little bit more understanding what is actually site reliability, where to start, and what sort of career journey and what sort of skills you need to focus if you're going to get to that field. And obviously, if you enjoy our session, make sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel, you know the drill, all the usual stuff. So I'll make sure that I subscribe to Stephen, your competitor as well. Slide reliability. So let's support each other, okay? So we're all in the same field. It costs us nothing to subscribe to each other's channels. And guys, and cost you nothing to subscribe to my channel as well. So please make sure to subscribe, like this video, and I will see everyone next Wednesday. Thank you so much again, Dom, Artem, Stephen. Thank you so much for your time this evening. And I'm sure we'll cross paths again, and maybe we'll do something in the future. Thank you again. Thank you. And we're right on time.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you.